It's Tuesday, and of course that means I'm joined by my regular guest, Larry Nichols. Larry, how are you today?
I'm fine, Jason. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. You're sounding strong, Larry. It's good to hear from you. Now, Larry, you
Good.
sent me an email earlier in the week, and I'm sorry that I wasn't able to get together with you sooner, but you have been really sounding the alarm for D-Day. What do you want to tell us about this D-Day?
Well, for months, Jason, I've tried to forewarn everybody that this is the battle for the heart and soul of our nation.
Yeah.
And the day that the new Congress people were sworn in, that is D-Day. That's the day their entire schedule and everything hardens, and it's all for the money now. It's
We've
all for
seen
the
that.
money.
We've seen that happening. They've been, someone introduced a bill to start investigating Donald Trump for money laundering or something like that.
Right.
How did you
Right.
know that this was happening, Larry? I mean, as you said, you've been talking about this since when, the days when you were on InfoWars with Alex Jones.
Well, yeah, Jason, it gets a bit frustrating on my end because if you do go back thinking about it the way you just did, if you go back to when I was on Alex talking about a silent coup, nobody believed me. Seemed too strange. Then when Trump got elected president, and this was before he took office, everybody was in such a euphoric state that they didn't believe me when I said he would be impeached. And so just over and over again, the things that I have told you were going to happen have happened, which makes people wonder, am I a prophet? Am I a fortune teller? Do I have dreams where things come to me? And the answer to all of that is no. Jason, all of this is because of something that was done in 1986 called the 86 Plan.
Right.
And in it was, gosh, Jason, I don't even know how you describe it other than to say it was a playbook to get the Clintons to their ultimate goal. Their goal, what they wanted me and Dick Morris, Paul Begala, and a couple of others part time on it. What they wanted us for was to get them a pathway because Hillary's such an anal person. They wanted a pathway of how to make them become the most powerful couple in the history of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, they broke the pattern and they lost, but the Democrats are doing it right now. So if you simply just cross over, let me give an example. When Bill Clinton was running against President Bush, Daddy Bush,
Mm-hmm.
uh, James Carville and those guys came up with this thing. It's the economy stupid. Do you remember that?
I
The
do actually,
economy.
yeah.
All right. What that does, remember when we were back during the election process, I was telling you how the system calls for you to make your opponent out to be whatever they've got to be made out to lose, and then
Right.
make yourself out to be whatever kind of person you're supposed to be to win. And
Right.
then when you get elected, do whatever you want to. Well, in that same time frame, that's exactly what they're doing, don't you see? They're taking, instead of it's the economy stupid, look what they're doing to Trump. They're superimposing on him impeachment,
Right.
impeachment. And every time you hear Trump, with the media totally 100% cooperating with him, every time you hear the name President Trump, it's going to be synonymous with impeachment.
Mm-hmm.
That will, in many ways, be more deadly to Trump in his 2020 campaign than the fact that Mueller's going to come out with all kinds of garbage to prosecute him over. I mean, they will have, quote unquote, what they claim they need, which is, if you'll notice, they've started the impeachment process with a couple of low level congressmen. But then when it gets to Pelosi and those guys talking about impeachment, they want to wait, to see if, gosh, if maybe there's something comes out of Mueller's investigation. Now, you know, and I know there's going to be something come out of Mueller's investigation. He was handpicked apparently, he was buddies with Comey.
Oh yeah.
Comey has in as much stated in testimony before the different panels on the floor. He's in as much stated that he did what he did with the hopes that there would be special counsel and that his good friend would be the special counsel. So it's a stacked deck. You can bet Mullins is going to come out right before the campaign season, or I'm sorry, right during the peak time for the campaign season for 2020. He's going to spring on Trump this indictment-filled report, and it's going to be about anything from parking tickets to speeding tickets to totally bogus allegations of fraud, money laundering, etc.
Right.
All of it.
That's what I've been hearing lately, Larry, is the money laundering thing. And again, it's never, people seem to have totally forgotten about this idea of somebody being innocent until presumed guilty or having evidence of a crime to do an investigation. We're now in this world where people can just investigate indefinitely until they find something that they can spin into a crime. Maxine Waters wants to investigate if Trump laundered Russian money. I haven't listened to this video, but I'm showing a thing here from Real Clear Politics where I don't think anything Maxine Waters says is real clear. I think it's mostly gobbledygook from somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. But why aren't they investigating if the Clinton Foundation laundered money? There's no indication that significant amounts of money were laundered by the Trump Foundation. It was filing problems and things like that. They're just wanting to find information that Trump laundered money.
Right.
I don't think it's there.
No, of course not. I mean, look, somebody with as many different dealings at the level President Trump had to deal with when he was in the contract business, we'd all be fools to believe that somewhere he didn't dot an I properly or cross a T.
Right.
That kind of stuff's going to be there. But, to commit, quote unquote, money laundering, that's a specific criminal felony, which means they would have to have proof that he he planned out how to launder this money. I mean, it's not one of those things where you can just say, uh-oh, we caught him. He thought he was paying this, but he really didn't. So therefore we can use it for money laundering. No, in a felony charge at that level, you've got to prove motive, right? And you've got to prove intent. He intended to do it. So, but all of that's irrelevant in this new paradigm, Jason.
Yeah. In
the new paradigm, nothing means nothing in our old standards. Number one, the foundational principle, innocent until proven guilty or judged by 12 of your peers, etc. You saw that fly out the door, although it's been out the door. But most Americans didn't realize it until the Kavanaugh case.
Some still don't.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm telling you, we do not live under the basic foundation that most Americans think we're living under. We're not.
Whoop. Oh, we lost you there, Larry. Let's see if we can get you back on. I think Larry might have inadvertently hit a button. Let's see if we can get Larry back in here. I am in a, not my usual location. There we go. He's right back on. He'll be with us. That's interesting. Something preventing Larry from connecting. Okay, we got your back, Larry. Sorry about that.
What on earth happened? I was on a roll.
I know. I don't know. Right now I'm in my friend Michael Barden's house, who is
Uh,
sharing a lot of information with me about how he has been targeted by law enforcement and other individuals. And sometimes when Michael and I do shows, we experience a lot of interruptions. I hope that's not happening now. I apologize, Larry. You were saying we're not living under the codes of being innocent until proven guilty. All of that stuff is out the window.
that's right. It's all gone. And that's why I fight so hard. I know that's why you do.
Yeah.
Folks, that's why we need y'all. We've got to get it back. We've got to get back to that premise.
Now, the other thing that's important, Larry, that I know you're going to want to talk about is that the other really important right that seems to have gone straight out the window is the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. You know, I think I've spoken to you a bit about how Carl Benjamin and Milo Yiannopoulos and a couple of other people have been blocked on Patreon. And it seems like that the order to do that blocking was coming maybe not from Patreon itself, but from international payment processors. And people really need to stop and consider how scary that is, because, you know, whether you're on Patreon or PayPal, you know, if people go to nicholslive.com and they want to financially support Larry by going onto PayPal and using his email address, which you can find right there, it's nicholslive@aol.com. If PayPal decides that they don't like what Larry is saying and he's not allowed to have money, I don't really think it's a good thing that we can have a corporation, whether it's PayPal or Visa or MasterCard. I don't think that these companies should be able to decide that something that someone says is objectionable. Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin, he's got the right to use foul language, racial epithets. You know, he can do whatever he wants under the concept of freedom of speech, and the idea is that those ideas will rise and fall on the merit of those ideas, not whether MasterCard or Patreon likes it or not. Now, that being said, they may say, hey, this is a family-oriented website, you can't use curse words, you can't use racial epithets, give them a warning, but to totally destroy somebody's income over something like that, it also seems a bit like kind of cruel and unusual punishment. The punishment should fit the crime. The guy didn't commit a murder, he used an offensive word.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, Jason. Welcome to this new paradigm. Welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's going to be increasingly hard for all of us to learn to maneuver through this new paradigm, this minefield of how things have been subtly changed. How, see, in a silent coup, you don't confront, like in a normal coup, we've talked about it before, in a normal coup, when you look from the scenes in the news, you see the Capitol surrounded by tanks and soldiers, and they've got the ex-president, you know, under guard, lock and key, or shot him.
Right.
But in a silent coup, it don't work that way. And as a matter of fact, the silent coup, in the long run, historically has always proven to be the most effective form of transference of power.
Wow.
Because it's done through subterfuge. You know, you start out and you move from the inside, and then you move a little higher on the inside, then you move a little higher on the inside, and you move your way up and up and up until you get to the top. And that's why I know where we're at. You see, we're at the beginning of the end of the silent coup's beginning. You got it?
The beginning of the end of the silent coup's beginning. But this is, you're talking about the 86 plan, a plan that you were involved in 1986 where the Clintons said, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're basically going to use these Saul Alinsky type tactics to, you know, it's essentially a marketing campaign, right? I mean, this whole thing, it's the economy stupid.
Just like an advertising playbook, sure as the world is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's essentially, it's almost like McDonald's, you know, they play a little da-da-da-da-da-da, and they had a song and they say, I love it, and then every time you drive by McDonald's, your brain is kind of playing that. It's almost the same thing that they did after September 11th when, you know, they said, oh, well, we got to go kill Saddam Hussein because, you know, he helped the terrorists. That idea hasn't really stuck over time. No one talks about that because I think everybody knows it wasn't true. But at the time, George W. was saying that. He used that as a motivation for the war.
That's right.
And the names even became conflated. Sometimes I find myself accidentally transposing those two names.
Well, and believe it or not, even me. I mean, when you just keep hearing something
Right.
over and over and over again, what happens, it gets inside your head subliminally.
Yeah.
And even though you and I are in this audience, of course, which is much smarter than probably either one of us, but the audience, it's in our heads, even though we know that it's a trick being played, and it's being played on the millennials, it's being played on the African-American community, the Hispanic community, all of that other kind of stuff. Even though we know all that, pretty soon it's still there in us too.
Well, it's almost like muscle memory, Larry. It's when you do the same thing every day, it just becomes automatic.
Mm-hmm. Now, I also told you back, oh gosh, Mike, I can't remember when we did the exact program. You can go through your archives and find out. And I told you about this incredible thing that the Democrats, once they took office or once they were sworn in, they would start this program for 2020's election, that they would start introducing legislation to give money back to the blacks through a form of retribution, or what do you call it? My mind just went blank.
Reparations.
Reparation. I'm sorry, excuse me. Thank you. And now, when you think of somebody saying, oh, okay, sure, yeah, now you've gone, Larry, off the deep end. There's no way any rational human being, even rational by Washington, D.C. standards, could anybody believe that there would be an honest to goodness effort to pass legislation to grant reparation to the blacks in America?
Right.
Boys, that's stretching it, isn't it? I mean, that's out there wingnut type stuff. I told you about another thing. They were going to say when they were sworn in that they would start pushing another thing, which would be paying off all college loans, erasing all college loan debt.
Right.
And then from then on, free education everywhere to everybody. Those were far-fetched things that even for me, saying something that's just such a stretch, you just can't believe it. Well, believe it or not, those two pieces of legislation are in the process. They're in the works.
Huh.
They're fixing to bring them. Now, may I explain what happens with those?
Sure.
Well, what's going to happen, they're running around, and it will become, quote, end quote, hate to use this word, sounds like I'm a racist. It becomes what's called a token legislation. Token.
Right.
What it's designed to do, they will go through the House, they will have enough Democrats in the House to vote it and pass it. And so here comes the fanfare. Here comes the mainstream media, the greatest day on earth. You know, Congress passes reparation for the blacks. Truth is, no, Congress did not. The House passed it. They can pass it, which makes it the token, because they can pass it because they know for it to become a law, it would have to go over to the Senate, then the Senate would have to pass it. And before it could become a law, even if the Senate passed it, it'd have to go to the president, and he'd have to sign it, which neither one of the latter two will happen. But see, people don't think that way, right? They just think, well, if television said it was that they passed this legislation,
right,
they're going to be lining up to get their money.
Exactly.
True.
So I think what I'm hearing you say, Larry, because I'm looking at this document here, this is from the 115th Congress, which is the one that just went out. We got the 116th that came in last week. But on congress.gov, they've got H.R. 40, Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act. So if I understand correctly what you're saying, the idea is whoever is proposing this probably knows that it would never happen, and if it did, it would be financially unfeasible and create tons of turmoil. But now we've got people who can go out and talk about this and stump for this, and then when it doesn't happen, they'll say, oh, well, that's Trump's fault, that's this guy's fault, that's the other guy's fault. I'm the congressman who wanted reparations for blacks. They run on that, and even if this person never had any intention of passing it, that becomes their issue that they can run on. Like we've got
right.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez now saying the other day that she wants to make the United States like Sweden. Did you hear that comment?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I can't imagine her. I just can't imagine her comments at all.
Well,
they're just
because, you know, they were talking about her being openly a democratic socialist, and, you know, the reporter asked her if she wants to turn the United States into Venezuela or Cuba or the Soviet Union, and she said no, she's looking at models like Sweden. And I would, you know, go out on a limb and say I have a feeling that Ms. Cortez has never been to Sweden, because as you might recall, Larry, I went there just a couple months ago in about September or October, and multiple Swedish people told me that democratic socialism has destroyed their country. And in just a short time of being there, I met several Swedes who were leaving. They said that the country was too far gone and they were moving to other countries because it's just over for Sweden. So on 60 Minutes, Ocasio-Cortez is touting socialism as the solution for America.
right. Well, that's
She's
the difference
normalizing it.
between, right, that's exactly the word right there, normalization. That is a far-fetched contention that we in this country would ever even possibly consider transforming our form of government from a constitutional representative republic to a socialist democracy. Now, you know, that's just to the extreme. You can't believe that anybody could even think of it. And then they get a wingnut like her. You know, everybody knows she's off the deep end. They all do. But believe it or not, they can start, that level of person can start the dialogue, you know? Right. It can start that process, and that's what she's doing.
Well, she's perfect for it. She's young, so she speaks to the next generation of voters. She's attractive, so people who maybe aren't so politically engaged are, you know, maybe more inclined to be interested to listen to what she has to say. I heard someone say she has more, you know, social media followers than, you know, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all these people combined. I mean, she's basically an instant celebrity, and that's dangerous in terms of politics because, well, I mean, depending on what side of the issues you're on, it's good for her, it's dangerous for her opponents. She's going to have a very probably long career.
Well, and what's the irony of that is if she gets her way, and if we do become this socialist democracy, she will not have a long career.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah. So, I mean, all of these things. And so the playbook, what the playbook does, Jason, is it's basically X's and O's, all right? You get to this point. When you get to this point, something's going to happen. Either the candidate's going to do this or the candidate's going to do that. And if he does that, then you've got something to do. If he does this, you've got something prepared. It's just a guide. It's a guide through it all. And all you have to do is change the nomenclature. When it was talking back during Bush's time against Bill Clinton, you just changed the names to Bush and Clinton. Now, fast forward it up into 2020, and you're talking about Trump and whomever the opposition will be for that race, and you just change the names, and it tells you what play's coming next. Now, the reason I give you all of this stuff, which really is worthless other than the fact, Jason, the fact that I tell you ahead of time what they're going to do. And the only way to stop what they're going to do is expose it to the light of day, ahead of schedule.
Right.
See, if you and I tell enough people that this whole reparation thing is a trick, and we say to the black community, which, by the way, is not as monolithic as they want you to believe, but you get to them ahead of time and say, look out, they're coming with this. They're going to do this to trick your population into a vote. And then hopefully by spreading the word ahead of time, what'll happen is they can't pull that trick. because it won't work. The whole point of these reparation and paying off all educational funds and debts and loans, that's all well and good. But the trick of it is it's got to be sprung on, because even dumb Republican opposition could tear it up if it had time to work through it. So they wait almost, an October surprise. They wait, and then throw it out there.
Right. When you say, Larry, that it's not as monolithic, you mean people like Hillary Clinton want everyone to presume that every black person thinks exactly the same way, and that's obviously not the case.
Exactly. I'm sorry if I was
no.
flipping.
Don't be sorry. I like to understand these. These conversations are always good because we have a lot of time to go through and really have some back and forth and understand what the points are. Larry, I don't know if you and I have spoken about this guy before. There was, and this is back to the Ocasio or Miss Cortez. Sorry, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. There was a guy who is, I think, similar in age to her, who appeared on CNN wearing a plaid shirt, and he got the name Plaid Shirt Guy. He was at a Trump rally standing behind the president and making faces. He got himself on the news. Then he appears on CNN wearing this just really, it's so strange, this democratic socialist kind of like patch that he's wearing, which has this weird swirl in a rose, but it's sort of like there's a hint of it, there's like a tease. It really is a marketing campaign. Like, when Apple first introduced the iPod or whatever back in 2000 or 2001, right, they might just show you a picture of it and you see it and you're like, what the hell is that? I have no idea what that is. But they're planting the seed in your mind. So perhaps this plaid shirt guy was that seed being planted to get people to start thinking about democratic socialism, because it's got that word democratic in it. They kind of try to cut the edge of it, right?
Right. I mean, look, democracies. There's a reason back in the 1700s, mid-1700s, a man named Alexander Tytler did a study of all democracies going back to the Romans, et cetera, et cetera. They all failed. Why? In a true democracy, you quickly learn that the trick to a democracy is who gets the most votes wins, always. Mm-hmm. So you learn to build coalitions. What we used to call with Clinton when I was with him, we termed ours the broken coalition. The blacks alone didn't have enough votes to win an election. Mm-hmm. The hippies, they didn't have enough votes to win an election. The yippies didn't have enough. So you take these, but if you took all of these different groups, and in that day, they had a high tendency to be monolithic. So if you knew who the leadership was in that community, you drop everything you're doing, buy off that leader, and then you've got that vote. Well, you add them all up, now you've got victory.
It's like the coalition of the disenfranchised.
Yes. And so they'll be using that this time.
Wow.
Now, there's one other piece of legislation that's up there on the drawing board, but this is what's interesting. It's being first thrown around in the Senate, and it already has 4 co-sponsors, of which 2, I am told, I have not seen their names, that's why I won't say them aloud yet, but 2 of them are Republicans. And this legislation is a part of a thing saying that if a person is in this country and must be regulated by the rules and laws that apply, then it's unconstitutional, or they need to be able to have a vote into those laws.
So to make undocumented people into citizens, or just by showing up in America, you're a citizen?
Well, yeah, it's kind of the language as I have seen a couple of the drafts of the thing. And what it does is kind of iffy there. It doesn't make you a citizen, and it limits and restricts your privileges in that sense. But it does give you the right to have the power to just vote. Just vote.
That's crazy.
Doesn't give you any other powers. Well, it's crazy, isn't it?
Well, but
I
it
mean, that's
builds
crazy.
this
Just
coalition of disenfranchised that you're describing, and then you're saying that's the Clintons' play, and you know it
that's
got
the
them
way
the
it works.
presidency, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's right. I promise y'all, these things are coming. This is real. I'm not sitting here making this up. This stuff is real.
Wow.
And the only way we're going to stop it, because it is, think about this. Number one, let's just say it works, just like by the rules. Other night I heard on Tucker Carlson, he said there was some Ivy League census that put 20 million, the number of illegals in this country right now, according to their poll,
Wow.
whatever, 20 million. Now, let me ask you this, Jason, if you had control of that 20 million votes, you had them, what would that do to a presidential election?
It certainly
What would
could
that mark?
swing it easily. I mean, we never have anybody winning by 20 million votes.
That's right. I mean, you're talking about just academically, if there really are 20 million, and you could get it to where every one of those had a vote and they all voted monolithically for the Democrat, then it's over. We don't even need to have an election. You can't possibly muster up enough votes to compete with that. You just can't.
Larry, how do they reconcile all of these policies that are so, you know, when taken to their ultimate end, obviously destructive? Like we heard Hillary Clinton, when Donald Trump announced that he wants to pull U.S. troops out of Syria, we heard Hillary Clinton say, that's a bad idea. People who want to kill us are in Syria and it's going to have consequences. But if there are people who want to kill us who come up through South America, through Mexico, to the border of California, they want to let all those people in. How do they reconcile that? Larry? Did I lose you? Larry, you still there?
I got the mute button off. Sorry, I had
no
the
problem,
mute
no
on.
problem.
I couldn't get it off.
There you
How
go.
do you reconcile it? They don't.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's no reason. Because when it gets to the end, it's over. Nothing applies anymore.
What's the end? What's the ultimate end here?
We become a socialist country where we're ruled, governed by a group of elitists, and it is basically application, the plan that the Progressive Council has had for at least probably 100 years or better. The new formula for America would be very much similar to that of the 16th century kings, queens, dukes, earls, that type structure. And that's what they want. And you've got one big cheese, you've got a committee of elitists that help deal with day-to-day passing and developing different restrictive laws that all of us designed to take up your money. It's just, that's where it gets hard. You know, people say, well, what does the end look like? The truth is, no one knows, even they don't know what the end looks like, Jason.
That's what I mean. That's what's so crazy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Larry, when you first mentioned the Progressive Council to me, I did a Google search for it and was unable to find anything. But I just did another one right now, and it reveals that there's an ebook called The Progressive Council, The Case for Collaborative Local Politics. So maybe this is new.
Well, it was called, when I was with it, the Progressive Council. It was just a name. You know, you heard the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral.
Right, right.
What are all some of the other names? All of those things are subgroups to this one group of ultra rich people. Look, if you want to see who rules the world today, there's probably 5 major corporations. Agreed? You know, like Apple. Tell me the big ones. Who are the big corporations in the internet
Google,
world?
I mean, they're the big ones in the tech world, but then there's huge ones that we just never hear about. Things like Serco and Serco Group, but they're huge corporations out there for sure.
Well, my point to all of it is, if you take, and everybody, now people are starting to say, well, yeah, you know, guess what? These 5 corporations have got more power than anybody in the history of the world. They've never seen anything like the power they've got. Well, if you look at the ownership of those companies, at the highest level, it's probably the same 5 to 11 people. They
But
just
they're
one
on the
guy's
boards, yeah.
and the other one's just a board member on the other, et cetera, et
Right,
cetera, et cetera.
right.
And so that they referred to themselves as the Progressive Council. And they would have their meetings, and that's when they would plan the downfall of this country or that one, just like you or I might figure we're going to eat a cheeseburger or we're going to eat a hamburger with or without cheese. What, you know, that's to them, that's the extent of it. That America is the icing on the cake. America is when the world changes. So they've got in their mind, but if you ask each one of them what they see the end, how do you see the final structure looking? I would bet you would get as many different opinions as you do the different people you would ask. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows. No one. And then maybe if you don't believe me, folks, then maybe we should look at like China. Look what China's doing, Jason. They're building up their military stuff out into the ocean. I mean,
the South China Sea.
Yes, yes. Think about it, folks. Why are they doing that?
Well, they want to invade Taiwan, I heard.
Well, that or maybe they're trying to brace up for the day that America does capitulate, that America does fold, and then under some new form of leadership, what's its position going to be with China? Because once you get to this socialist state level, like the dukes and earls of the 16th century, I got a problem. You've got the king, you got the queen, you got the dukes, the earls, and you got this elitist group. But beyond that group, in socialism, ask Venezuela. If you're not in that elitist group, you're trash. You're nothing.
Yeah.
So China is sitting there saying, well, if they ever get to that point, you know what? Nuclear war, which is mutual self-destruction, if they don't care about all of the peons, the pawns in America, if they don't care about them, then they're not going to worry if we blow some of them up. It's a prescription to disaster.
Yeah.
At a level never even imagined before. That's the kicker, Jason. Can you believe it? Destruction at a level never even imagined before.
Yeah, it would be bad for sure. And China, of course, just landed a probe on the dark side of the moon. So, I mean, you know, that's kind of a display of technological power and capability.
Yeah, all I ask before my time on this planet is done, all I ask is let's expose what's coming. Let's do the one thing that I can prove worked. And by the way, it's understood by many in Washington. This is not me. This is the words I get from them, that they all attribute me to having a major part to do with Bill Clinton being impeached in that of the original scandals on Bill Clinton from what's her name,
Paula Jones.
Well, before Paula, God,
Jennifer Flowers.
Jennifer Flowers, from Jennifer Flowers all the way to Whitewater development, land development, all the way to Monica Lewinsky. 36 of the 37 major scandals that were brought out against Bill Clinton, 36 of them originated with me.
Wow.
So, therefore, the thinking is, well, since you're the one that got one impeached, is it possible that you might be able to stop one from being impeached? And the answer is yes.
Let's talk about that Clinton impeachment for a moment. So the House approved so Bill Clinton, how did it come about? He had lied under oath in testimony about these sexual assaults, right? What was the specific charge against Bill Clinton, and how did that get started with Kenneth Starr? And talk a little bit about how it differs from Robert Mueller. Was Kenneth Starr confirmed by the Senate?
Yes.
Why was Robert Mueller
the last? Well, because it was such a fiasco under Starr that they all agreed from then on there would never be
Another what?
another special prosecutor, another special counsel, or whatever. Kenneth Starr's title was whatever, special counsel, special prosecutor, which was legal in that day. But because of how it became such a media show, how it became such a disaster, politically wise or politics wise, Congress got together after it was over and passed legislation to say that that could never be used again. Never used again.
Larry,
So,
did you see this story in the Washington Post? It's so strange how these mainstream sources just sort of say whatever false thing they want to be true. This article from, I guess, October, oh, sorry, it's an opinion piece, of course, but it says the Ken Starr investigation was a witch hunt. Mueller's probe is not. This is like Bizarro World. This is from July 2018 by Nelson Cunningham.
well, I would hate to see what that guy that wrote that eats for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And
It says that he served as general counsel of the Senate Judiciary Committee under then Chair Joseph Biden, as general counsel for the White House Office of Administration under President Clinton.
mhm. So I wonder what his bias would be, just
Right.
naturally.
Right.
Look, Jason, I'm telling you, all of this is right in front of you. It's right in front of us all. It's laying right there. But remember, under the structure of subterfuge, the way they've done it, they got it to where if you do catch one of them, who are you going to call to do anything about it?
Right.
Because just you kind of look there, you catch somebody and you throw them in and say, well, boy, we got them this time. Well, every venue that you would take them to be able to prosecute them is controlled by them.
Yeah.
And they do protect their own.
It's scary.
It is scary. I wish that was all it was. But I promise you, if your audience will do me a huge favor, and I mean it, folks, huge favor. I don't do this for fun. It certainly is not fun. But I need you to support Jason's program. We've got to. Because there's going to be a time now, since D-Day has occurred, they have landed on the beaches of the front of the United States of America. I mean, there it is. D-Day is the day they got sworn in, Jason. It's the same thing as the Allies setting and taking foothold on the beaches of Normandy. That's where we are. And we're going to have to fight them. We cannot this time just lay back and think that President Trump by himself can stop them. We can't lay back this time and say, well, you know, America's been here. It'll always be here. It'll have a little bump in the road, but she'll sure come on back. No, that's not true.
Yeah.
We need the help. What did they do, Jason, to help keep you up? Because you're my place to go. As you know, Jason, and Jason can tell you this, I'm not healthy enough to do 10 million shows a day. I'm not. I have to pick a place, and I have chosen him.
I appreciate that, Larry. People can still support the show by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And people can also make one-time sponsorship payments by going to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. There's been a lot of things going on with Patreon. I hope that people will stay with Patreon. We're trying to sort out exactly how it came to pass that Carl Benjamin was forced out of that situation. I'm not yet convinced that it was a decision made solely by Patreon. But Larry, I got to thank you and also remind the audience that you need our support as well. I have been periodically bringing up nicholslive.com to remind people that they can sponsor Larry by clicking on the donate button at nicholslive.com and navigating to his PayPal address. It's nicholslive@aol.com. So you do need to go to paypal.com to pay Larry, and please help Larry. He needs our support. He is there giving us his insights, And there's always a lot of views on these shows. So if people want to see Larry continue coming back, I hope that we'll show him the courtesy of providing some financial sponsorship. There are no ads on these shows. We're not owned by some billionaire corporation. I don't pay Larry a salary. He doesn't pay me anything to appear here. So he appears here at the audience's choice. If you're watching the show, please sponsor Larry by going to nicholslive.com and show him some sponsorship support. So Larry, I think a lot of people are getting dialed into this feeling that we are experiencing a change. And it's, you know, we've heard the boiling frog, that it goes slowly. It's sort of like that kid wearing the democratic socialism pin. I mean, you see a kid on CNN wearing a pin, that's one thing. Then you hear the word democratic socialism. Now we see an attractive female, youngest congresswoman ever talking about democratic socialism. And for as many people that dislike her, of course, she appeals to very many people. If you're a woman, if you're young, if you're Hispanic, if you feel disenfranchised and you see someone coming up in Congress who has maybe traditionally been considered among the disenfranchised, that's going to make a lot of people feel empowered, and they don't necessarily want to critically think about what's being said. It's, again, it's identity politics. They like this person, they're going to support her.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think the audience understands. One of the reasons I'm here, guys, is because Jason does not take advertising revenue. He's not sponsored by an advertiser. Because sure as that happens, his ability to tell the truth whichever way he sees it is gone. You see, that's how that works. That's why CNN, that's why MSNBC, that's why they're the way they are. If they want to be journalists, that's fine. Call yourself a journalist. But if you want to be a journalist, so-called, and work for MSNBC, I got news for you. You will do what you're told.
Yeah. Everybody at every news outlet says that. The guy who made the movie Vaxxed tells his story that he left. I think it was CBS, I'm not sure, but he got information from a whistleblower in the CDC who said they're suppressing this information. And as a journalist, he felt it was important to bring that out. It was in the public interest to know this, to put pressure on Merck for suppressing information by leaning on the CDC. This is how all this stuff works, and this is why I've reconsidered all this anger that people are projecting towards Patreon seems misdirected. I don't think that the same people who are canceling their Patreon accounts are stopping using their Visa cards or their MasterCards, but that may be where the order is coming down from. So you're talking about influence now, Larry, and we see these big corporations influencing the news, influencing the politicians. You know, Bill Binney recently told me, Larry, that he felt the biggest change and the most dangerous thing that he saw in his whole career in 30 some odd years in the NSA was the massive shift away from government employees and military veterans towards contractors, outside corporations that were very, very focused on maintaining and increasing the scope and value of those contracts. And it occurred to me that, you know, if you want to become president, it's pretty difficult. You gotta, you know, either you're gonna rig the election or you're gonna get the votes, but you've got to be elected through a complicated process. If you can transfer government functions to a corporation, all you need to do to control that corporation is buy up all the stock.
And that's exactly what they do. I remember when Donald Trump was thinking about getting in the race, I remember going on a radio program after another, and they'd say, well, what do you think about this guy, Donald Trump? I said, well, I don't know him personally, but I can tell you this. If he runs, he's the only one that's got a chance, because you know what made Donald Trump different?
Didn't need
He
the
had
money.
his own. That's right. And folks, that drove the RNC crazy. That's why for the first time, we, the American people, you got to see inside of a primary, how it's rigged so that you think you're getting to pick who you want, but you're really not.
Right.
The people that have the money, they pick who's going to be it.
Yeah. Well, Larry, that's been admitted. You may recall, Larry, you appeared on a show late last year with Jared and Elizabeth Beck, who are running that lawsuit against the DNC, and in a court filing, they admitted that they can pick whoever they want, irrespective of who votes for who.
And then when you take that to the next level, you've got a Democratic primary system that's rigged. You got a Republican primary system that's rigged. And so when we get, I'm talking about the president, office of the presidency, when you get to the final election for president of the United States, we are always relegated to what? The lesser of two evils. Same people. One bunch is wearing a blue uniform, the other is wearing a red uniform, but they're still the same team at the top.
Yeah.
But here comes Donald Trump. What on earth do you do with a guy that don't need their money? You know, and let's just get to the chase here. You know what Donald Trump's doing? Donald Trump, and I recommended, and I give an open letter in a program that I did today that'll be out tonight on our website. What I'm saying basically is, President Trump, just stand up and say it. Just stand up and say it at the State of the Union. Hey, I was hired to build this wall, to get rid of NAFTA, and list the things that, you know, were his major campaign commitments. That's what he was hired to do.
By the American people.
Now, by the American people. Now, the Democrats, were you elected, the ones elected this year, were you elected for the sole purpose of getting rid of Trump? Was that your whole thing? You're getting elected to get rid of Donald Trump? Is that it?
I mean,
because that's what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you don't hear talk of any other issues. It's just, let's get Trump. Let's get Trump.
It's crazy, and it's a new idea each week.
Yeah, we can beat them, Jason. We can beat them, and I can prove that we know we can beat them. You know, somebody's up there saying, "Wait a minute, okay. You're telling us that just because we know ahead of time that something's coming, and if we make it public, or we start talking about it, informing people, then they can't do it." That sounds all well and good, but they don't believe it can happen. Well, look at the power that's already been shown by these tweets and twigs and emails and stuff to the White House and to the congressman. You have no idea, folks, how many times that's been effective at changing one's perspective, because there's one rule that I swear by. The people in Washington care about one thing and one thing only, buddy. Just one. It ain't me and you, and believe it or not, yes, and it's not even getting rid of Trump. They care about their job. Their job. Because they may not know how this thing ends either. However, they do know that if they're in office, when this thing collapses, they are guaranteed a seat at the table of the elitist. At least a seat. And by that standard, it means for the rest of their days, they and their families are covered.
And Larry, would it be fair to say that there's a lot of people who are also motivated to destroy Trump's presidency, because if it succeeds, so many people in Washington, D.C. will be exposed for their criminality?
And very much so, unless the problem we run into there is, yes, with the power Trump has as the office of the presidency, once we defeat them resoundingly, you would say, well, then we got him, because then all he's got to do is just appoint a straight, honest, you know, attorney general and appoint straight and honest judges here and there. Well, the trick is, once he got there, you found out the rest of the package of subterfuge and what it does. And now, even if he gets an attorney general that catches let's say Mueller breaking the law instead of trying to prosecute it, even if he catches Mueller, where are you going to take it, Jason? Tell me, where do you go? Who are you going to call?
Well, we saw that in action last week, and we saw it at Emmett Sullivan's presiding over the hearing of General Flynn. You know, Larry Klayman was speculating that perhaps some sort of pressure was put on Judge Leon, because he called a hearing to tell Larry that he was resubmitting Dr. Corsi's case against Robert Mueller to the random selection pool, which seems very odd to me, Larry. I mean, you've been through a lot of court cases. Usually a judge doesn't call you into court and go through the trouble of having all the stenographers and all the people there and clogging up their docket to sit there and tell you for 5 minutes that this case is going to another judge. That's unusual.
Oh, yes. Highly unusual. Highly. Yeah. But here again, you're going to have to, in this new paradigm, Jason, we've just got to get ready. Highly unusual is going to become normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see, once you get control of the mechanisms, I would say, of this country, I don't know what else you'd call it. Let's just say the mechanism, the machinery that drives it day to day to day, the cog, the wheel. Mm-hmm. Once you get control of that, the top is just a formality. The system will do the work for you.
Oh, meaning Trump is sort of just he's not really in charge of as much as people would think. There's a lot of sort of stuff obstructing him from being effective.
That's exactly right. He is, look, we're just at the point, I hope maybe today's program, Jason, I hope it helps some of the audience understand what you and I have worried about and fear. We're really at that moment where we could lose our country.
Yeah.
No, there'll still be a Little Rock, Arkansas. There'll still be a Phoenix, Arizona. Yes. But it won't be America anymore. You know, they have elections in Cuba back in the day, even with Castro. The only difference between their elections and ours, they have elections, but their ad campaigns are different. You know, vote for Castro or we'll kill you. I mean, you know, they got that kind of thing. But you still get to vote, you know. Hey, feel like you're making some wise choices, right? Because you get to vote.
Yeah. You know, Larry, I think a lot of people would say we are already in a country that does not resemble the America that I recall from the days before September 11th, 2001, the days before the Patriot Act, the days before this just flagrant violation of rights, total decimation of the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. You know, we've just got a few minutes left, Larry. I wanted to ask you, because we were talking about this in kind of a roundabout way, but, you know, Bernie Sanders has sort of come back up in the news lately. I'm showing a photo right now of Elizabeth Warren speaking to Bernie Sanders about would he run again. Do you think Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren represent a legitimate challenge to Donald Trump?
No, you bet. If they get their way, why do you think there's 30 or 40 Democrats lining up to run for president? They are thoroughly convinced that if you want to know who's going to be president in 2020, it's whichever candidate wins the Democratic primary, because they are going to have so branded Trump with impeachment. Then at the exact moment, the most inopportune time for Donald Trump and his campaign in 2020, Mueller will release this report. And folks, don't kid yourself. This report is going to come out bad against Trump.
Right.
You know, think about it, Jason. I haven't looked at one piece of evidence. I have not seen one piece of evidence in that entire prosecution system that he's using. I've seen nothing. But I can tell you right now, just as sure as my name is Larry Nichols, I can tell you when that report comes out, he's going to have to charge Trump with something. He will. It's over. Done. Fait accompli. Don't even mess with it. Don't even worry about it. Why even bother, right? Why even bother with getting evidence and building a case? It don't matter. It don't matter at all.
Yeah.
They're going to get him. They're going to get Trump.
Well,
unless we stop them.
Yes, yes. I hope that's right, Larry, because there's a lot of news coming out now that's, that we can stop him. There's a lot of news coming out now that Adam Schiff wants to get Donald Trump's Deutsche Bank records. I mean, you know, this is not a country where you're supposed to be able to look through every single thing somebody has, records and finances, and try to find something wrong. There needs to be, you know, a legitimate accusation for a crime. We're in a new paradigm where anyone can say anything ridiculous. We need to remember this all started with a document that said that Donald Trump hired hookers to urinate on a bed. And we have never seen any evidence of that. How did it explode to all this crazy stuff? But it's working. They're leading the American people down this primrose path, the people that want to see Donald Trump unseated as president. There's so many people who have said so many times that it's a foregone conclusion that the Russians interfered with the election, but yet we've never even heard an explanation of how that happened. There was no secret airplane tarmac meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in the way there was between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton. There is no transcript of a discussion in which Donald Trump speaks about how they're going to hack election machines or change the vote. There is not even a clear explanation of what it is that the Russians purportedly did to manipulate the election, but yet this has expanded into an investigation of a scope we've never seen before.
Yeah, and what is crazy, when it gets said and done, folks, the charge that they're going to bring against Trump will be absolutely baseless, foundationless. There'll be nothing there, but it won't matter. It won't matter. You see, I know, you know, Jason, and what the audience needs to know, that by the time he releases his report, for the Democrats then to so-called be able to pick that up and use that as the premises for them to go forward with an impeachment is impossible prior to 2020.
Right. They just want it to land right in election time.
That's right. They just want the presidency.
Right.
They just want the presidency. They got to get rid of Trump fast. Get rid of it. And what scares them, which is what's got everything jammed up, which we're going to use to our advantage, they're having to hurry up, Jason. They're having to speed things up because you know what? If Trump screws around and gets another one of his big campaign promises and pulls it off, there's always this risk that the tide's going to turn. Instead of people hating him the way they've set it up, you know, people are going to start liking him. If you sit down and face the facts, man's just doing what he was hired to do. That's all he's doing. He's just doing what he was hired to do, which is to, you know, build that wall.
Yeah, well, and I think that's why he's pushing on that particular point so hard right now. You know, Larry, before we go, I just wanted to point out along the lines of what you're saying, Alan Dershowitz just the other day, I think on Good Morning America or something like that, he came out and said that the impeachment would backfire and that it might actually help Trump. So you don't know. It's never over until it's over, and I certainly think we should have security in this country from dangerous people who want to enter it. I'm less worried about dangerous people in Syria than I am worried about dangerous people climbing over a fence into California. I want to thank my guest, Larry Nichols, for joining me once again. People should go over to nicholslive.com. You can financially support Larry there. You can also read his blog posts, and you can contact him and see some of the scripts that he's written, as well as get the phone numbers for your representatives. Call them up. Share your concerns about some of this stuff. And remember, if you enjoy listening to Larry, if you enjoy sending me emails about how you don't like Larry, if you want the show to continue here with Larry, you've got to financially support him. Please go to nicholslive.com and send some money to Larry. You can go on to paypal.com and use his email address at nicholslive@aol.com. Larry, thanks once again for joining me. The conversations are always interesting, and I really appreciate it. I will speak to you soon, my friend.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jason. See you all.
Take care, Larry.